Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's show of Oh, the Places I've Been. I'm glad to be here with you. And while I have a wonderful lineup of guests for you every week, this week I thought for the foundational show that I would go ahead and tell you about lessons that I've learned in life. And all of this was prompted by a young woman, very wise beyond her years, always has been, who made a post on Facebook. And the post on Facebook was rather sobering. And here's a young woman of 26 years who unfortunately is dealing with her dad, who was in an accident, had a severe brain injury, and life will never be the same for her or for her family. And so what she did is she reposted information about the importance of getting an estate plan in place for times when you could never imagine that you'd be faced with very difficult decisions on behalf of loved ones. And so thinking about that post and how pertinent that is to lessons that I've learned in my life, I thought that I would kick off this show with the topic of life planning. So, not necessarily planning for your death, but planning for your life, the quality of life you hope to have when the time comes and important decisions need to be made. Now, this isn't a Debbie Downer show on any level. What this is intended to do is hopefully impart on you lessons that I've learned in the area of estate planning as an attorney, but also as a human being who's lost her mom, her dad, and her three brothers in a relatively short period of time and at relatively young ages. So certainly nothing I could have anticipated any sooner than it happened. It was my mom's passing originally in 1995 at the age of 60 that sent me on this path of how do we protect and preserve everything we've created, and how can we give one of the greatest gifts to the ones we love in the form of an estate plan. It is a difficult topic to discuss, but it has no age limits. There's not a certain age you reach and then all of a sudden it's time to get your documents in place that will protect you in the event that you become incapacitated, or worse, if something happens and you pass. So this Facebook post by my young friend really brought back memories of the lessons that I've learned and the people that I've encountered in my family as well as outside my family. And so I hope this is of benefit to you. This is not legal advice, but this is information about estate planning that I'm always happy to clarify for you or put you in touch with resources that could help take you to that next step. So an estate plan is not so much about your things. Everybody thinks, oh, it's about my things, the things that I want to leave people. Well, things towards the end, and take it from me, I volunteered plenty in nursing homes, hospices, and hospitals. At the end, the things are the least that people are concerned over. They're concerned over their loved ones. And is everything going to be okay after I pass? Will they be taken care of? And what I can tell you is that while a will, which is an element of an estate plan, is important, or a trust in the event you have certain properties or certain life situations that would require a trust, what's most important in your estate plan are your medical and financial powers of attorney. And why would that be? That's because those are documents that govern decisions during your lifetime. So if you're incapacitated, temporary or permanently, you want to make sure that there is someone that you trust, that you've appointed, that can step into your shoes and substitute your judgment on medical issues or financial issues. And so these appointments, they're not honorary appointments. You don't put in the oldest child, and then the next child, then the next child. You have to make sure that whoever you're appointing to be your financial agent or your medical agent, that they're ready to take on the responsibilities of being a fiduciary. And a fiduciary is a very special position where you can be criminally or civilly liable for wrongdoing, whether it's intentional or unintentional, when it comes to managing one's affairs. Now, it's a high burden that you would have to exceed in terms of recklessness or negligence. But the point is that you want to make sure you're not setting anybody up for failure. So for a medical agent in your medical power of attorney, you want to make sure it's someone that you've shared your thoughts about life with and thoughts about your transition with. Someone who will be the one-point person medical care providers can go to get answers about medical decisions. Likewise, for financial agents, for your financial power of attorney, you want to make sure that whoever you appoint is someone who is fiscally responsible, that you can trust with your financial dealings. They're the ones who will be receiving funds on your behalf, paying bills on your behalf. It is a big deal. And so when you're putting in place your powers of attorney, which are contracts essentially, that go into effect once you sign them, and they last until either you revoke them or you pass. But they're contracts that you as a principal appoint others as agents to act on your behalf. And normally you have at least 3 appointees, never all at one time, but in succession. So in the event someone can't perform as your agent, then you have a secondary nominee or a third nominee. Now, I can't tell you how important these documents are, because it's, again, during your lifetime, people who are going to come in and affect your care and affect your finances. And the financial power of attorney is intended to prevent the need for conservatorship. And the medical power of attorney is intended to prevent the need for a guardianship. I think what's important for everyone to understand, and the lessons that I learned, is that guardianships and conservatorships, anybody can qualify, frankly, as a guardian or a conservator. It's a very low threshold of relationship. They can petition to have priority over family members. They don't have to be qualified or certified. There's no standards necessarily. They don't have to sit for an examination. They don't have to be credentialed in any way. And oftentimes they'll get paid for their services. So if you can only imagine, as has been the case in my life, both professionally and personally, where someone comes in and asserts authority over a loved one's medical or financial decisions simply because they can, because there's nothing preventing them from doing that. Now, the medical and financial powers of attorney should be able to do that, and especially if you put the term durable in the title of those documents. So durable means, so a durable medical power of attorney or a durable financial power of attorney. What that means is that during a person's incapacity, no one can come in and disrupt their appointments. No one can come in and assert authority outside of those that the person appointed while they had capacity. Unfortunately, there are times, and I've seen it, and have been involved in situations where public administrators or professional guardians will come in and disrupt. And yes, even overrule durable medical and financial powers of attorney so that they can appoint themselves and usually their colleagues to come in and take over very important decisions with very little relationship to the person for whom they're making the decisions. And usually to the disruption of a family that's already in turmoil, is already confused, is already grieving over the situation. So it's essentially an exploitation of vulnerabilities that people are allowed to do in our system. It's not often, thank God, but it can happen. And so it's very important that you take every measure possible to protect your financial decisions and your medical decisions during times when you cannot make those for yourself. So please get those medical and financial powers of attorney in place. They're for your lifetime. They expire at death. The financial powers of attorney are transferred essentially to your personal representative in your will. And your medical powers of attorney, of course, because you've passed, are no longer necessary. The medical power of attorney in particular can refer to your wishes in your living will, and that's very important. So the medical power of attorney appoints this agent, and this agent can make important decisions and planning decisions about organ donation, life sustaining decisions, life prolongation decisions. So what type of nourishment does this person get? What type of care does this person get during a very critical time when they're transitioning? And so it's important to give that medical agent the authority to refer to your living will when they're conducting their business, or I should say your business, or they're conducting business on your behalf. So the living will now is, again, a very important document. Not about your things. Everybody, again, I'm going to keep shifting you away from the will and the trust about your things. But the living will is a very specific document that dictates 3 areas towards the end of life: artificial nourishment, artificial life support, and then organ donation. Usually the living will only goes into effect when you qualify as being terminally ill or you've been unconscious for a certain period of time. But what I can tell you is the best living will, not just in Colorado where I live, but in most every other state, right here, it's called the 5 wishes. Now, the 5 wishes, if anybody out there doesn't have a living will, please contact me and I will give you a copy of the 5 wishes, which is a wonderful living will. This living will, of course, talks about artificial nourishment, artificial life support, and organ donation, but it also has many other factors people don't think about at the end of life, but that have meaning to them. How they wish to be treated, how they want to be kept clean, perhaps the music they want to listen to. Those types of decisions are decisions people can't necessarily make at the time when they are going through a very important time in their life, their transition. So people are quick to say, well, you know, we only have one life. And I'll be one to always say when I'm talking to people about an estate plan, well, you only have one transition too. So what do you want it to look like? How do you want to control it? What do you want to leave your family in terms of memories during a very, very painful time? When my mom passed, we didn't have the 5 wishes. This didn't come into being until the year after she passed. I wish it was available. What I can tell you is that by the grace of God, I was able to still incorporate what I felt would have been the wishes that she'd have in this document. But the 5 wishes is very special in that it is a legal document. It is legally binding, but that it was drafted by an organization called Aging with Dignity in conjunction with the American Bar Association. The organization Aging with Dignity was founded, and I believe it might still be run by Jim Toohey. Jim Toohey is an amazing man I had the honor of meeting years ago. He was Mother Teresa's legal counsel, I think for 10 or 12 years at the end of her life. He tells amazing stories about how Mother Teresa definitely got her way when it came to end of life decisions, but maybe I'll leave that for another show. But the point is through his firsthand experience with death and dying, alongside Mother Teresa, came this amazing document. And again, there's 5 wishes. You can handcraft what you want, how you might want it. They have language in here that you can go ahead and you can circle if something speaks to you, cross out things that you don't want, and there are also lines. So if you want to handwrite in certain things that have meaning to you, please do. Again, reach out to me and I'm happy to make this available free of charge. The first wish is always going to be who's your medical agent. And so, of course, you want to make sure that whoever you've appointed in your medical power of attorney, that it is reconciled here, that you have the same person so there's no confusion. What's the second wish then is your wish for the kind of medical treatment that you want or that you don't want. The third wish is how comfortable you want to be. The fourth is how you want people to treat you. And the fifth is what you want loved ones to know. Again, they don't give you a lot of space, but I'll talk to you about another document called the Ethical Will, which again, I strongly believe is one of the most valuable documents in your estate plan. But this document, the 5 wishes, I just can't say enough about it and how important the living will is. Now, every state has a statutory living will, and you can pay an attorney money for that. And it is simply, here are my choices about these 3 areas. For life sustaining measures, yes, I want them, no, I don't want them, or I want them for so many days. For nourishment, yes, I want it, no, I don't want it, or I want it for so many days. For organ donation, of course, it's a yes or no answer, but you can't put in any qualifiers. Some people are very concerned. Will somebody pull the plug on me prematurely so that they can get my organs? Not that a family member would do that, but there are a lot of pressures and a lot of inputs coming at you when you're trying to help someone at the end of life. And also you can understand that tasking someone with making decisions after 5 days, after 7 days, I can tell you death is not that clean and cut. It's not that cut and dry. When the time comes, you think you'll be ready for it, but I don't know if you could ever truly, truly be ready for it. And the first time you lose somebody close to you, it's very traumatic. And it's not that it gets easier the more people you lose, but with each person you lose, there's no learning curve. When my mom passed, there was no learning curve. And I wasn't able to say, oh, you know what, the next time my mom passes, here are the decisions I make. Here's what I'll do. Here's how I can help. And so another message to people listening and another lesson learned is be very gentle and forgiving with yourself. When the time comes, you're going to do the best you can. And that's all that's expected. And if you play a role as a medical agent, a financial agent, a personal representative, you were provided those roles because the person who's passing trusts you. And they likely already know you're not perfect, but that you'll always do the best you can and always act in their best interest. And so let that guide you as well if you are ever in these roles. So getting back to when my mom passed and how I got into estate planning, and I'm not going to forget the thing part. So we'll get back to the will and a trust in the event you want to make sure that your real property and your probate property goes to the people you want. We will get there. But let me go ahead and tell you how I came to some of these lessons that I hope to impart on you today. My mom passed in a matter of 6 weeks of pancreatic cancer. She was young. She was a young woman. I was 30 at the time. I didn't have any kids. I certainly wasn't ready to lose my best friend. My dad, the first thing he said to me is, Joey, she screwed up my plan because I was supposed to go first. So getting back to how things should go in your mind and the time you have to make plans and how it's all going to unfold, let it go. Because the one thing we can't control are these types of situations. My young friend, she couldn't have anticipated that her dad was going to be hit by a car, suffer a traumatic brain injury, and perhaps never be the same again. Not only her, but anybody who goes through that type of a situation, it is a death of sorts. You do grieve. You have lost somebody. You lost them as you knew them. Now, you'll find other things to love about them. You'll get to know them in a completely other way. And most of all, you really come to know yourself more when you're put into these situations. So no one wants to go through them, but when you do go through them, be sure to take the right lessons forward. Be sure to reach out to people that have been there, that have done that, and that can help. So when my mom passed in 6 weeks, I can't quite express the impact that it had on me. She was everything to me. She was my faith. She was my friend. She fulfilled roles I didn't even know existed. And she was incredibly faithful. And while she could have gotten angry, I could have gotten angry at God. My whole family could have gotten angry at God. Really, it drew us all closer to our faith and closer to the realization that if we ever wanted to see each other again, we better all get on the same page on some level, so that hopefully there'd be a way for us to all be together again. So when she passed, though, and based on her faith and the faith that I came to have more of, I became a certified minister of care through the Archdiocese of Chicago and threw myself into situations I still can't explain. But I wanted to be around people who were transitioning. I wanted to be around their families. I wanted to offer help, to be a source of comfort. I can tell you hands down that the time that I spent in those ugly environments, if you'd want to call them that, it left me so much better off as a human being. It gave me so much more than I probably ever gave it. And it wasn't until 9 years later that my dad passed away. Again, my best friend. He was an amazing man. Still wasn't ready. Mom passing first didn't make it any easier. And then came the complete unexpected. I'm in a family of 5, got 3 older brothers and an older sister. And in rather short succession, I lose my 3 brothers. The first one I lost, he was only 57 years old, and that was in 2018. The next 2, I had the oldest then go, Edward, and he was, I think, 60. And then my sibling soulmate, Terry Turk, he also passed that same year, 2020, and he was 59. There, again, is no preparation for losing anyone in your family, much less your siblings, much less all three brothers in a short period of time. And so, what this brings me to is the most important document, which is the ethical will. Now, what's the ethical will? It doesn't have anything necessarily to do with ethics. It's not a legally binding document. But a lesson that I learned in losing these family members is I wish I had more of their story. I have one sibling left, my sister, Carol, and she's helped try to document things. But there's still nothing like having things in writing, something you can reference when the memory starts to go. As I get older and I can't remember things, I get so very frustrated. But the ethical will, there's a book on it. I want to share it with you. And it's a book by Dr. Barry Baines. And Dr. Baines and I communicated, I believe we started back in 2006. And Dr. Baines is an oncologist. And so you can imagine the experience that he has had while people are transitioning. And so the ethical will has nothing to do with things. Again, you see a common theme here? Don't get caught up in your things, because at the end of life, the meaning is in so many other things, including your legacy. So the ethical will is a document you can put in your own handwriting, you can type it, you can have somebody else do it at your direction. But it's about who you are and what you want people to remember about you. What are your thoughts about love and forgiveness, spirituality, finances? What lessons have you learned along the way? And you can address this document individually or collectively. So you could address it to your spouse. You could address it, one, to each of your children, or collectively to your children, or to each of your grandchildren, or collectively to your grandchildren. The beauty about this document is that it's a living document. You may have passed, you may have transitioned, but your thoughts and your wisdom and your legacy, your hopes for the future, can be contained somewhere where people can go to at any time they're struggling with an issue. And that's what makes it a living document. If you're struggling with a financial issue, you go to the document, you pull out that wisdom. If you're struggling with a spiritual issue or a marital issue, there's so many issues, as we all know, that we encounter as we go through life. You can go to a document where perhaps you can hear the voice of your loved one. You can hear their wisdom. You can hear their tone. You can garner their sense of humor. I can't tell you enough about the sense of humor my mom had, my dad had, and of course, my three brothers. This is a picture of my three brothers and my father. And this is a picture of my mom and my dad, who loved each other very, very much and imparted on us to love each other unconditionally. And they didn't have to put it down in writing. But do I wish that I had that? Absolutely. And when my mom was passing, I didn't have a document like the ethical will to help her populate or to help her write. But instead, as she was passing, I have these notes, which are now 26 years old, that I still go to and try to remember what she thought about certain things, or to try to remember all the stories of the goofy things my mom and dad did that shaped who they were, and essentially shaped who I was because of who they were. So again, the ethical will is another document in the estate plan that I can't say enough about. Now, I have to thank my sister Carol, who, when my dad, after my mom had passed, there was a time he lived with my sister Carol. And my sister, thank God, and thank you so much, Carol, I love you, had Dad go ahead and do a tape record. Now I'm going to have you listen to this only because I listened to it earlier and I hadn't heard my dad's voice in, 18 years. So listen to this carefully, just so you can see how important this could be.
You can understand this. I'll speak slowly, but at this rate, it may take years to get this thing recorded. But let's see what it sounds like and start from there. Right. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Today is March 11th, 2001. I'm 69 years and etc. old. First thing I have to say is that God is good. I've had a wonderful life. I've been very, very, very fortunate. Got many more things than I will ever deserve. Been surrounded by beautiful, loving people who have given their all to me. So I have no complaints at any time. I certainly got way more than I deserve or should have. But, you know, as I said, God is good. I married an angel, and we'll talk about that later on. But I want the whole world to know that she was God's gift to me, and I can never repay that in any way, manner, or form. But we'll go on now and start with my life. I was born January 20th, 1932, on a blistering, wintry day at Chicago Lion Hospital.
I'll leave it there. But there's not a day that goes by that I don't wish that I had my dad's words, his thoughts, his sense of humor, his perspective. And so again, the ethical will is a document. If you need any additional information on it, I ask you reach out to me. I will email it to you. Of course, it is borrowed from the book Ethical Wills by Dr. Baines. I'm unapologetic about that because I have seen it mean so much to people. And when it comes to estate plans in general, another lesson I've learned is people have the belief on a certain level that if I don't plan for dying, I'm not going to die. But as we know, that's not true. And planning is one of the best gifts you can give to your family. It takes the guessing out of decisions that will have to be made. And when guesses have to occur, when there is a lack of planning, a lack of communication, a blind spot on what somebody should do, the survivors can live years and years with guilt. Did I do the right thing? Did I make the right call? What if? What if I did this? Would the person still be here? What if I did that? Would I have had another couple of days with them? So again, that ethical will, I can't tell you how important it is. I have a page here of dadisms. My dad had a sense of humor like no other. He comes out of my mouth all the time. My kids, in turn, also have very twisted senses of humor. I'm not apologetic at all because without a sense of humor, I don't know how I could have gotten through all that I've gotten through. That in addition to my faith. So with that, I've talked about my mom passing, my dad passing. And while I've briefly spoken about my brother's passing, the one lesson or the one life experience I had that taught me the most was when my brother Edward, very highly decorated, trying to get it out of the glare, there. Very highly decorated Navy veteran, had a massive stroke at the age of 49. Not expected, of course. He was not only incredibly fit, he was very active, he was young, no previous issues with heart disease or anything, but he was also someone who did a lot of deep sea diving on behalf of the government. and as a result, had a helical carotid that was undetected. And hence, when it dissected, he had the massive stroke. So Eddie came to live with my husband, Paul, and I. We had the durable powers of attorney in place. We had his estate plan in place. We thought we had everything figured out. But Edward had just enough capacity to not always make the best decisions and to not always let the right people into his life. And so as a result, he was appointed a guardian. He was appointed a conservator. They did pillage his estate. They did divide our family. Now, I'm not going to go much into that because, again, it's not about what happened. It's about what we do with what happens. And so the lessons learned there, again, are to plan. Plan for the unexpected. Plan for what you don't want to have happen. Put the plan away, though, then, and get back to the business of living. It shouldn't be a scary process. I hope it's not for you. If it ever is, then you're with the wrong person who's doing the estate plan. And I'll just touch briefly on the will and a trust if it were needed. So these are about your things. A will deals with personal property, so all your things, real property, depending on how the real property is titled. If real property is titled tenants in common, then everybody has a fractional share. And when one person passes, you have to open probate, the administration of the estate, so that that share of property can be transferred to the beneficiaries. If you have property titled tenants in common, that means that joint tenancy with right of survivorship. If you have joint tenancy with right of survivorship, that means that anybody on that title owns 100% of the property and the survivor wins. So when one person passes, not by probate, but through operation of contract law, the property passes to the survivors. That's a great thing, unless the people that are on the deed die at the same time. Then the property has to be probated in order to be transferred. So you have your real property, you have your personal property, and then you have your cash, your residuary, the pot of money into which things flow and out of which bills are paid. Now, getting back real quick to the will, when it comes to personal property, you can be very general. I leave it to my spouse first. If my spouse predeceases me, I give it to my children in shares of substantially equal value. But if there are things that are really important and you want to make sure that this object gets to this person, you can go ahead and have a memorandum for disposition of your property. And as you come up with what you have and who specifically you want it to go to, you can fill in the blanks. It can be done after you execute your will. You just want to sign and date entries. And if whatever it is you're giving away is lost, broken, stolen, make sure you line it out as things like that happen. One of the best ways to simplify an estate is to give away things during your lifetime. If you're surrounded by things that have meaning to other people and they've lost meaning to you, think about giving them away during your lifetime. It gets rid of any dispute after you pass. You get to see the joy on the face of the people to whom you're giving something that they want. And so that's one way to do it. Now, the will does not control 401ks, investments, life insurance. All of that is non-probate property. So please be sure to check your beneficiary designation forms. Make sure they say exactly what you want. So for me, I have all of those types of contracts. The forms say to my spouse first, if he's predeceased me, then to my children in shares of equal value. I have no problem sharing any of this with you, just as an example of these documents. Now, a trust, attorneys love to sell trusts, and I don't mean to bash attorneys. I am one. There are many, many good ones out there, but trusts can be probated more than wills. And the reason why is because a trust is an empty vessel. It's a document that creates an empty vessel into which you need to transfer property. Once you transfer the property to the trust, then the trust can take over. The terms of the trust will dictate. What's good about that is that trusts don't necessarily have to go through probate. They can be converted to a probate action, but if you do them right, they stay relatively private and easy to administer. But again, they have to be funded. So make sure if you have a trust that it is funded, that whatever it is you want to go where according to the terms of the trust, that you have it on a Schedule A. And a Schedule A is just that list of what the trust owns, be it a house, be it an account, be it a car, whatever it is. Just make sure that you've made the proper transfers so that your things can go to the people that you want your things to go to. I've heard plenty of stories about fights in families after somebody passes. Sometimes it's said that probate is just divorce after death in terms of fighting over things. So again, one way to just avoid any fights is to distribute during your lifetime to the extent it makes sense, and to the extent, of course, you're not giving away things necessary for your living either. But anyway, that's all that I really have for today. It's not a Debbie Downer show. Estate planning is not about losing control. It's about having control, about maximizing your control while you have capacity. Once you lose capacity, that's when you lose control. That's when a conservatorship is needed to manage your finances. That's when a guardianship is needed to manage your medical decisions. That's when a public administrator can come in to get paid to give your things away. That's not what you want. That's not what your family wants. At the end of life, you want to make sure you're at peace as much as possible, and that those you love are at peace as much as possible. And you can do that with information that's important to your transition. So again, we only have one life, but we only have one transition. And so try to do the planning necessary to make it as positive as possible and to leave nothing but love for those that are left behind. So that's all I have for today. I hope that you've learned from some of the lessons that I've learned, and I'm here to help in any way and give you additional information that can help you get your plans in place, put them away, get back to the business of living. I wish you well. I hope you have a good week, and I will talk to you next week. I have a wonderful lineup of guest speakers I'm excited to have on the show. Each brings their own lessons that they've learned. I encourage you all to go ahead and listen to Dr. Zeus's Oh, the Places You'll Go. I think that in addition to the description of the show about Oh, the Places I've Been, will bring into perspective what I hope this show will do for those that are guests and tell their stories, as well as those who listen. So take care, be well, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.